Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Gaurav Sharma and with me is Saira Mujtaba, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. India-Japan holds 2+2 Foreign and Defence Ministerial meeting in Tokyo. Both countries reaffirm their commitment to a rules-based global order that respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of nations. Indian and Chinese troops start disengagement in a planned way from the Gogra Hot Springs area in Ladakh. Education Minister of India Dharmendra Pradhan calls upon American institutions and companies to partner with India in education and skilling landscape. Finance Minister of India Nirmala Sitharaman says importing Russian oil is a part of the country's inflation management strategy. Commerce and Industry Minister of India Piyush Goyal to attend the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum Ministerial meeting in Los Angeles on Friday. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina pays obeisance at the Dargah of Sufi saint Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti. Australian Parliament passes climate bill, pledges to reduce carbon emissions by 43% by 2030. And in sports, Olympic gold medalist javelin thrower Neeraj Kumar to take part in the finals of the Zurich Diamond League javelin throw event tonight. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar held the second India-Japan 2+2 Foreign and Defence Ministerial meeting in Tokyo with the Japanese Foreign Minister Hayashi Yoshimasa and Defence Minister Hamada Yasukazu today. A joint statement issued following the meeting said that the ministers reaffirmed their commitment to a rules-based global order that respects the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of the nations. They emphasized the need for all the countries to seek peaceful resolution of disputes in accordance with the international law without resorting to threat or use of force or any attempt to unilaterally change the status quo. The ministers highlighted their commitment to a common strategic goal of achieving a free and open Indo-Pacific, free from coercion, that is inclusive and resilient and based on the rule of law. They also reiterated their strong support for ASEAN's unity and centrality and their full support for the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, which upholds the principles such as the rule of law, openness, freedom, transparency, and inclusiveness. The ministers had a frank and fruitful discussion on the regional and global issues of mutual interests and concerns, particularly those in the Indo-Pacific as well as Ukraine. While expressing its resolve to examine all the options necessary for national defense, including the so-called counter-strike capabilities, the Japanese side expressed its determination to fundamentally reinforce Japan's defense capabilities within the next 5 years and secure substantial increase of Japan's defense budget needed to effect it. Acknowledging Japan's determination to reinforce its defense capabilities, the Indian side expressed its support to work towards enhanced security and defense cooperation. The ministers expressed their commitment to continuing bilateral and multilateral exercises including Dharm Guardian, JIMEX and Malabar. The ministers noted with pleasure that the air services of the two countries are working closely for the early conduct of the inaugural India-Japan fighter exercise. They also expressed their shared intention to make continuous efforts towards more complex and sophisticated bilateral exercise. The ministers concurred to launch the Joint Service Staff talks between the Japan Joint Staff and the Indian Integrated Defence Staff.
Indian and Chinese troops in the area of Gogra Hot Springs in Ladakh have begun to disengage in a coordinated and planned way. India-China joint statement said this is being done after consensus was reached in the 16th round of India-China Corps Commander level meeting today. This is conducive to the peace and tranquility in the border areas.
Education Minister of India Dharmendra Pradhan has called upon the American institutions and companies to partner with India in the rapidly transforming education and skilling landscape. Mr. Pradhan today participated in the India Ideas Summit organized by the US-India Business Council and the US Chamber of Commerce International Affairs South Asia. He said that education and skill development are important pillars of the Indo-US relations. The minister called for greater academic collaboration between higher education institutions in both the countries for offering twinning, joint degrees and dual degree programs. Speaking about the national education policy, Mr. Pradhan elaborated its role in empowering the 21st century learners and building a vibrant, future-ready workforce. He said that under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India is taking great efforts in skilling, reskilling and upskilling its youth. The minister said that India has a large, young and educated population which is an asset to any industry globally if they are provided focused training and capacity building as per the industry requirement.
India's finance minister said on Thursday that importing Russian oil was part of the country's inflation management strategy and that other countries were doing something similar. India's crude oil shipments from Russia have jumped between 12 and 13% of imports from all sources since February, from about 2% before then, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said. India is the world's third biggest consumer and importer of crude oil, and Sitharaman said Prime Minister Modi deserved credit for balancing trade and other ties with various countries. Inaugurating a conference of Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relations in New Delhi on Thursday, Ms. Sitharaman said that she gave credit to the statesmanship of the Prime Minister to make sure that globally that India did keep up the relationship with all countries but yet managed to get Russian fuel, which is what Japan is doing today, which is what some other countries are doing as well. Talking about inflation, she said that the finance minister said that bringing inflation down cannot be the sole responsibility of the centre. She stressed the states also play a critical role in the management of prices.
In today's Hotspot section, we have a discussion on India's strides in digital payments. In conversation are A.K. Bhattacharya, an economic analyst, and Shishir Sinha, a journalist.
Data released by National Payment Corporation of India or NPCI says that Unified Payment Interface has clocked over 6 billion transactions. This is highest ever since the inception in 2016. Mr. Bhattacharya, what is the significance of this number?
This clearly shows the popularity of the Unified Payment Interface. As many of your listeners would recognize that this is a platform of recent origin. This was started only probably in around June or July of 2016. And this is an interface which has got three main purposes. At one level, it allows a user of a mobile phone to download the app and link that app to his or her bank account and make transactions on that, whether for payment to a service provider or a goods provider or to transfer money from one bank account to another bank account. Now, this happens in a seamless way through an OTP recognition of the user. So it's a fairly simple, easy transaction methodology using a technological platform called Unified Payment Interface. It has been embraced. The fact that it has been embraced very quickly, particularly during the COVID time, is proof that at a time when people were not going out to their banks, going out to buying goods or services to the place, they were using the UPI platform because till October 2019, the usage was only of 1 billion transactions. And now it has gone up in the last 3 years, it has gone up to 6 billion transactions. So that itself shows that how during the COVID time, its utility and its use actually gone up several times.
Mr. Bhattacharya, if we take the absolute number in terms of transaction, which is 10.6 lakh crore or 10.62 trillion rupees, considering the cash transaction we have in the economy, do you think that this is much less than expectation or do you think that it is meeting the expectation?
I would say that UPI is not just for dissuading people from cash and encouraging them to use a cashless transaction. This is actually a platform by which the ease of making payments and ease of receiving payments is actually given a big impetus. So yes, I entirely agree with you that seeing the rise of use in cash particularly in the last few years, can be disconcerting for many people. But there are also many economies in the world which are highly cash dependent. Take Japan or take Brazil. So I would not judge the performance of UPI on the yardstick of how much cash is still being used. On the contrary, what I would say and what I would like to see is whether UPI transactions in themselves are going up or not. The fact that they have gone up several folds in the last few years shows the popularity of UPI and its technological advancement. In a sense, it is a seamless transactions. Failure rates are very low. That, to my mind, is something that needs to be recognized.
The other thing is that when we say a digital transaction, at the same time we also see the cash in circulation is rising. So we are seeing digital transaction is rising and we are also seeing cash in circulation rising. How do you see these two contradictions?
Well, I don't see this as a contradiction. I think the increased use of cash is happening because probably people don't want to come under the tax net. They don't want to keep a record of their transactions in the public domain, or at least in the domain where the tax authorities or anybody in the government can track them. So that is also a tendency to evade or avoid being watched or being tracked for your transaction. That is a big incentive for going in for cash. There are also small transactions where people are not encouraged enough to go in for UPI for the simple reason that even in small villages and small towns, cash transaction is considered easier and better because it has got no other associated costs. Now, for UPI payment, you need to have a technology compliant mobile phone. You need to have an identity, which is an online identity. And there are a large number of people in this country who are technologically quite illiterate, and they may not go in for UPI kind of payments, and they may prefer still to go in for cash. There is yet another reason why cash still holds an advantage over the digital payment formats like UPI, which we can discuss later.
When we say increase in digital payment, it also indicates a formalization in the economy. And we have seen the impact of formalization in economy, just like what we saw increase in the GST collection as was reported today, that GST collection reached 1.49 lakh crore in the month of July. So do you think that the higher number of digital transaction means more formalization of the economy, and that will reflect in the tax number and that will also help in various other activities?
Yes, there is no doubt that more digital transactions, greater use of a unified payment interface will actually lead us to formalization of the economy. I would argue that yes, formalization of the economy through such digital transaction encouragement and through such greater use of digital transaction is a good thing, but this cannot be an end in itself. You have to make digital payments a preferred mode of payment, and that is possible if the costs and the necessary wherewithal that we need for making a digital transaction are made more accessible and made more easier and made more inviting, if I may use the word. Right now, there is a big question mark over greater use of unified payment interface and digital transactions because of an impending policy change on the levy of merchant discount rate on linked RuPay and even to UPI. Right now, there is no merchant discount rate levied on any UPI payment, but the day is not far off where the UPI payment will also start attracting maybe a very small percentage of the total transaction amount, but this itself, to my mind, will be a big hurdle, so to say, in promoting digital transactions, in promoting the use of unified payment interface, because people will consider cash to be an easier and less costly transaction mode than UPI. So therefore, our policy environment and our awareness programs will have to keep pace with the need to make use of digital transactions as easy, as less costly as a platform than cash if we want to achieve the goal of reducing the use of cash in our economy.
So I wanted to bring the issue of merchant discount rate, as you rightly mentioned, that we need to see that the cost should not go up. But do you think that the MDR is really necessary, because there is a one-time investment and the recurring investment is not that much high, where you need to collect more and more money through the MDR for the digital transaction, because it is discouraging people to use that. So what is the way out?
The big debate over such things is always been that a public good versus private good. The way the unified payment interface has been conceived, it is being run by an entity which is not purely a government entity. It is an entity which is promoted and its shareholders are different financial intermediaries. They are providing this service, but we cannot assume that these services do not have a cost. So every service has a cost, and even if it is a very small percentage of cost, that cost has to be reimbursed. So there may not be a profit motive. The merchant discount rate need not be levied at a rate which provides them huge profit, but certainly reimbursement of the cost incurred in creating that service is something that people should not mind. What is important is that if an X person wants to use unified payment interface at a price, then whether his payment capacity is good or not is something that has to be kept in mind from a policy perspective. Like we do have a free food ration program. Now that free food ration program is not going to everybody. So therefore, from a policy perspective, I would say that UPI cannot be free. MDR needs to be levied, but probably these initial stages, you can make MDR not a factor to be kept in mind, not a factor that needs to be enforced for transactions made by people below a certain income level. That way, you will be encouraging people to embrace this digital transaction, and as and when they graduate to a level where of a certain income strata, they can probably make that payment. It's a bit like the subsidies for services that should not be enjoyed by people who can otherwise afford that service without the need for that subsidy.
Mr. Bhattacharya, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi today inaugurated the Kartavya Path, a stretch to the central vista from the Rashtrapati Bhavan to India Gate. He also unveiled the statue of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose at India Gate. Speaking on the occasion, Mr. Modi said that India has received a new energy and inspiration today as the nation is breaking free from the shackles of colonization during the Amrit Kaal. He said that history has been rewritten.
आज हम गुजरे हुए कल को छोड़कर आने वाले कल की तस्वीर में नए रंग भर रहे हैं। आज जो हर तरफ ये नई आभा दिख रही है, वो नए भारत के आत्मविश्वास की आभा है। गुलामी का प्रतीक किंग्सवे यानी राजपथ आज से इतिहास की बात हो गया है, हमेशा के लिए मिट गया है। कर्तव्य पथ के रूप में नए इतिहास का सृजन हुआ है।
Recalling the sacrifice and valor of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Mr. Modi said that India's glorious history runs like blood among the nation's youth. He said that India would have reached unprecedented heights had the country followed the vision of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. Housing and Urban Affairs Minister Hardeep Singh Puri said that Kartavya Path is the heart of the nation's capital. He said the inauguration of the Kartavya Path is in line with the Prime Minister's second Panch Pran for New India in Amrit Kaal, that is to remove any trace of colonial mindset.
Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal will attend the first in-person Indo-Pacific Economic Forum ministerial meeting in Los Angeles tomorrow as part of the second leg of his U.S. tour. He will also attend U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum and other events in Los Angeles. Ahead of the meeting, interacting with the media, the minister said discussions at the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum would discuss an opening opportunities for the member nations to work in partnership with each other. Mr. Goyal said it is to ensure that, particularly during challenges and difficult times, supply chains remain open and business and people of countries don't suffer because of chaotic conditions like the COVID pandemic and conflict.
Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina paid obeisance at the Dargah of the Sufi saint Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti in Ajmer on Thursday afternoon. She was given a red carpet welcome at the Dargah amid high security arrangements. Hasina performed ziyarat at the shrine. As per the protocols followed for visits by a head of the nation, there was no other devotee in the Dargah premises and the Dargah market was also closed. Hasina and her delegation reached the Jaipur International Airport by a special aircraft. She was received by the State Education Minister B.D. Kalla and top officials. The delegation stayed for a while at the VIP lounge of the airport before leaving for Ajmer by road.
The Australian Parliament has passed a government legislation in view of a pledge to reduce carbon emissions by 43% by 2030 and further bring it to zero by 2050. The Senate passed the bill with 37 votes to 26 with amendments from Independent Senator David Pocock before being passed by the House of Representatives hours later. The legislation, which still needs royal assent before it officially becomes law, will set a target greenhouse gas emissions reduction of 43% by 2030. It also enshrines net zero emissions by 2050. The Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Chris Bowen, said that the passage of the climate change legislation sends a message to the world that Australia is serious about driving down emissions and serious about reaping the economic opportunities from affordable renewable energy. Mr. Bowen said it also strengthens transparency and accountability through annual climate change statement and will ensure public debate informs government decisions. The bill is passed with the support of the Greens Party and Independents. This is the first step in climate action following Labour Party coming to power this year.
Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen today said that Taiwan is confident that it can sign a high-standard trade deal with the United States under a new framework. Ms. Tsai told the U.S. lawmaker delegation during a meeting at the presidential office that her country would work with the United States to develop stronger trade and economic ties. She added that Taiwan has already announced that the negotiations under the U.S.-Taiwan Initiative on the 21st Century Trade will initiate soon. In June this year, Washington and Taipei unveiled the U.S.-Taiwan Initiative on the 21st Century Trade after the Biden administration cut out the Chinese-claimed island from its Asia-focused economic plan. Taiwan has long pushed for a broad, free trade deal with the United States, its most important international backer and foreign arms supplier, even in the absence of formal diplomatic ties.
Queen Elizabeth II is under medical supervision recommended by her doctors at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. The British monarch's doctors are concerned for her health following the evaluation. Buckingham Palace says that Queen is comfortable and was at the Balmoral. British Prime Minister Liz Truss expressed concern over the monarch's health in a tweet saying that the thoughts of the people across the country are with the Queen and her family. As per the news reports, the royal family members have been informed regarding the Queen's medical situation. Members of the family are reportedly on their way to Balmoral, Scotland. The Queen turned 96 this year in April.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Kyiv on Thursday to pledge $2 billion in fresh security assistance. The Biden administration hopes that it will bolster a nascent Ukrainian counteroffensive aimed at pushing back Russian forces in the south and east. This was Blinken's second visit to the Ukrainian capital since Russia's February invasion, as Ukraine's reported progress in its effort to retake the territory seized by Russia near Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv. Blinken met Ukraine's Foreign Minister, Dmytro Kuleba, saw U.S. diplomats, and visited a children's hospital where he met youngsters injured in Russian bombardments. According to the official statement, the money is intended to defend the sovereignty, modernize security forces, enhance partnerships with Transatlantic Military Alliance, NATO, and strengthen capacity to counter the Russian influence and aggression.
The 5th India-US Maritime Security Dialogue was held in New Delhi today. During the dialogue, the two sides discussed developments in the global maritime domain, bilateral maritime cooperation endeavors, regional support initiatives, and collaborative efforts such as Indo-Pacific Partnership for Maritime Domain Awareness. They affirmed their shared desire to enhance maritime security internationally and strengthen cooperation towards a free, open, and inclusive maritime order that would support security, inclusive growth, and prosperity. During the dialogue, the officials had an opportunity to discuss regional issues pertaining to South Asia, the Indian Ocean region and the Indo-Pacific. The two sides agreed to remain engaged with the objective of further enhancing the depth and substance of the India-US Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership.
The Defence Research and Development Organization, DRDO, and the Indian Army have successfully completed 6 flight tests of the Quick Reaction Surface-to-Air Missile QRSAM system from Integrated Test Range Chandipur off the Odisha coast. The flight tests were conducted as part of the evaluation trials by the Indian Army. The flight tests were carried out against high-speed aerial targets mimicking various types of threats to evaluate the capability of the weapon systems under different scenarios, including long-range, medium-altitude, short-range, high-altitude maneuvering target, low radar signature with receding and crossing target, and salvo launch with 2 missiles fired in quick succession. The system performance was also evaluated under day and night operation scenarios.
And now a report from the business world.
The Sensex rose 659 points or 1.12% to close at 59,688. The Nifty was up 174 points or 0.99% to end at 17,799. At global stock markets, Asian share markets traded mixed. Japan's Nikkei 225 gained 2.3%. Singapore's Straits Times closed 0.7% up and South Korea's Kospi added 0.3%. On the other hand, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index declined 1% and China's Shanghai Composite Index slipped 0.3%. European shares were mixed and trading in a narrow range in intraday trade. Oil prices fell, extending sharp losses from the previous session. Crude prices declined amid fear after China's extension of lockdown measures as it dampened economic activity globally and hit fuel demand. Brent crude was trading at $88.45 per barrel. Anubha Rohabki for World News, All India Radio.
In the last Super 4 match of Asia Cup T20 cricket, India defeated Afghanistan by 101 runs in the Dubai International Cricket Stadium. Chasing a victory target of 213 runs, Afghanistan made 111 runs in the stipulated 20 overs for the loss of 8 wickets. For India, Bhuvneshwar Kumar took 5 wickets. For Afghanistan, Ibrahim Zadran with an unbeaten 64 was the top scorer.
Olympic gold medalist javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra is all set to take part in the finals of the Zurich Diamond League javelin throw event tonight. The 24-year-old star became the first Indian to qualify for the final of the event. Neeraj Chopra will compete in the grand event alongside 5 other world-class javelin throwers. That includes Yaqub Adilaj.
And now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Globe and Mail reports Ukrainian-Canadian lobby calls for tougher sanctions against Moscow.
South China Morning Post writes China to tighten domestic travel restrictions until the end of October.
The Washington Post writes Solomon Islands pro-China leader wins bid to delay elections.
The Financial Times reports European Central Bank raises rates by 75 basis points.
The Wall Street Journal writes Fed's Powell affirms need to act strongly to fight inflation.
The Guardian writes drought declared across whole of Wales despite recent flooding.
And the Japan Times reports South Korea offers talks with North for reunion of war-torn families. And before we end the bulletin, a quick look at the headlines once again. India-Japan holds 2+2 foreign and defense ministerial meeting in Tokyo. Both countries reaffirm their commitment to a rules-based global order that respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of nations. Indian and Chinese troops start disengagement in a planned way from the Gogra Hot Springs area in Ladakh. Education Minister of India Dharmendra Pradhan calls upon American institutions and companies to partner with India in education and skilling landscape. Finance Minister of India Nirmala Sitharaman says importing Russian oil is a part of the country's inflation management strategy. Commerce and Industry Minister of India Piyush Goyal to attend the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum ministerial meeting in Los Angeles on Friday. Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina pays obeisance at the Dargah of Sufi Saint Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti. Australian Parliament passes climate bill, pledges to reduce carbon emissions by 43% by 2030. And in sports, Olympic gold medalist javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra to take part in the finals of the Zurich Diamond League javelin throw event tonight.
And now before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from North Macedonia on their Independence Day.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.